Okay, guys, so we're looking now at the opening of Act 5, Scene 1, and Lady Macbeth's sort of hallucination um, of guilt that captures her final moments in the play. So we can really see in this scene the sheer burden of guilt. This is the real warning to us that Shakespeare provides about the fact that you can't get away with guilt. You know, guilt in the end is its own form of justice. You see at the top here, Lady Macbeth combines several previous threads in this little clip of the scene. Firstly, she's hallucinating like Macbeth in Act 2, Scene 2, where he talks about the dagger of the mind that he imagines leading him towards the murder of Duncan. So she here is subject to that same sense of paranoia and guilt and anxiety that he experiences in that scene and that she dismisses. She's also sleepless. So she completes this motif that we see throughout the play. And she's trapped in a paradoxical state, a self-contradictory state of what the doctor calls slumbery agitation, that she's both stimulated and asleep or half asleep. And so we see that what that sleepless state represents, the confusion of moral categories, being almost encapsulated in this moment just before she commits suicide. She also keeps attempting to wash her hands in this hallucination, in this sleepwalking. And so in that hand-washing motif shows us her inability to escape guilt that she so consistently talks about. A little water clears us of this deed is ironically exposed to be a complete sham of an idea in this scene. It's shown up to be completely untrue. She starts here on line 31. She says, "Out, damned spot, out." And this damned spot that she's referring to is the imagined bloodstain on her hands. She's sort of imagining washing her hands and imagine being able to clear it off here and dealing with that sense of guilt. Her lines, though, also, this out, out, mirrors one of the extracts we'll look at later on, the last of the sort of important passages of monologue that Macbeth delivers, where he says, "Out, out, brief candle," and he's talking about life itself. And her lines echo his here. And so there's this suggestion that they both realize they're coming to a conclusion. It's just 1, 2. Why then, 'tis time to do it. And she here seems to be hearing the bell, the death knell of Duncan from Act 2, Scene 1, the 1, 2 being the ringing of the bell. And she seems to be going back to that moment in the past where they were resolving to kill Duncan. She says, "Hell is murky." And it's ironic here because it seems to come back to this simple idea that she expresses, that a little water clears us of the deed, that it's so easy to get rid of the evidence of their guilt and to escape that guilt. But she seems here to know that hell is her destination. She seems to be aware of the fact that that's where she's going. And this murkiness contradicts the idea of the water clearing them of the deed. There's a kind of contrast in those two terms. She's imagining talking to Macbeth here and says, "Fie, my lord, fie, a soldier and a feared." And so she's relying in those lines here on her old methods for provoking Macbeth, that she's calling him a wuss and a wimp, basically. "What need we fear, who knows it, when none can call our power to account?" And she's talking here about the challenge to their authority. None can challenge our authority, so why do we care if anyone knows it? And the great irony here is that the guilt she displays at this moment reveals that she can't escape all forms of justice. So even though no one can call her power to account in physical terms, her own guilt is calling her to account. She's trapped in this past sin, and punished by the crippling guilt that she thought she would be free from. And so she is completely wrong here about herself. Yet who would have the thought, the old man, to have had so much blood in him? So she's talking about Duncan's body here, and there's a horror in this, that she's surprised by how much blood seems to have escaped his body. And so the blood functions almost as a symbol of their guilt here. and shows us the sense of horror that seems to have traumatized her. And the doctor is asking the gentlewoman attending on Lady Macbeth if he hears it. Do you mark that? Can you hear what she's saying? And she says, "The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now?" And he's talking here about Macduff and the fact that his wife has been murdered. And the irony there is that Lady Macbeth will soon to be joining her in death. She's about to kill herself. What? Will these hands never be clean? So that motif of hand washing resurfaces again. And these are an echo of Macbeth's own lines. And the great irony is that she's anxious about the same thing here, even though earlier on in the play she seems to, dismiss it. The little water will clear us of the deed. And she's actually imagining Macbeth's lines here, and then speaking back to him. "No more of that, my lord, no more of that. You mar all with this starting. You ruin everything with this nervous jumpiness." So she's again imagining, kind of reassuring him and telling him not to be afraid. "Doctor, go to. You have known what you should not." And he's talking to the gentlewoman here. He realizes that she heard Lady Macbeth revealing the nature of all their crimes. She has spoke what she should not, I'm sure of that. Heaven knows what she has done. So she shows that she's aware of the crimes that Lady Macbeth alludes to. Lady Macbeth says, "Here's the smell of blood still." And so she uses a different sense, not just sight here. It shows us how I think that the sense of guilt is impossible to escape. She's imagining the smell of blood now on her hands. And then these lines, really crucial in the scene. "All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand." So she cannot cover her guilt. And this mirrors Macbeth's lines. "Will all great Neptune's oceans wash this blood clean from my hand?" And so here it's actually about covering the smell. So again, she realizes in the same way that Macbeth did earlier on in the play that they can't escape their guilt. Also, this little hand, I think, overtly emphasizes her femininity, and that she actually wishes to lose earlier on in the play when she says, "Unsex me here." So there's this overt reference to her femininity that shows you that she was unable to do that as well. She was unable to become not a woman. And the doctor says, "What a sigh is there. The heart is sorely charged." And this phrase is highly ambiguous. This functions as a pun here, because it can mean heavily burdened. Her heart is heavily burdened by the horror of his crimes. But it also functions as a pun, in the sense of being charged with a crime, accused in a legal sense. So she seems to be traumatized both because she's guilty and because she's burdened by that guilt. The woman then says, "I would not have such a heart in my bosom. So I wouldn't have such a heart in myself for the dignity of the whole body, for the status as a queen." She's saying it's a poor deal that she struck for her traumatic sense of guilt for the status of being a queen. And the doctor then says, "Well, well, well, pray God it be so." And the doctor says, "This disease is beyond my practice, beyond his profession." He realizes that it concerns the business of the soul, not the body. So he realizes that what's wrong with her is nothing he can fix with medicine. It's actually the needs of the spirit, because she has sinned. "Yet I have known those who have walked in their sleep who have died holily in their beds." He's known people who have died holily in their beds, who have seemed a lost cause. But here, I think there's this sense that she is a lost cause in spiritual terms, that she's not going to die holily in her bed. And she again talks as if she's speaking to Macbeth. "Wash your hands." That motif resurfaces again. "Put on your nightgown. Look not so pale. Don't be so fearful. I tell you yet again, Banquo is buried. He cannot come out on his grave." He's referring there to the ghost in Act 3, Scene 4. And she's imagining talking to Macbeth, and the great irony is that this happens as she's more mentally unstable and anxious now. So she is speaking to him and reassuring him at the moment that he himself is less anxious and unstable. And the doctor says, "Even so." Lady Macbeth finishes by saying, "To bed, to bed." She's trying to get him to sleep again. But obviously he's not even there. There's knocking at the gate, and there's that knocking that happens before the porter scene, after the murder. A suggestion of oncoming guilt. "Come, come, 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 give me your hand." There's this final gesture of their relationship. that is both tragic and very ordinary at the same time, of a couple just, the lady dragging the man to bed. And then she says, what's done cannot be undone. To bed, to bed, to bed. And so this is an ironic echo of Macbeth's lines in Act 1, Scene 7, when he says, if it were done when it is done, if it were over when the deed is complete, because he knows that he's going to experience guilt. His anxiety about being able to trammel up the consequences, catch in a net the consequences of the murder, seems to be justified here. When it is done, it cannot be undone. And these lines seem to undo the message that she previously gave him, that actually, when you've carried something out, it can't be unfixed. And then she finishes with, to bed, to bed, to bed, and ends with this longing for sleep and mental peace that she will no longer have again. Her guilt in this scene proves Macbeth's lines from Act 1, Scene 7, that we still have justice here, and that we can't escape justice because the private justice of guilt will in the end drive us insane.